You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is 9/8/21. Well, big theme on this show is the people who you think are your friends sometimes aren't, particularly if they inhabit a space of Manhattan, at least theoretically or figuratively. You'll find it on the corner of Broad and Wall. We're talking Wall Street here. And Wall Street exists for one purpose, and that is to make money for itself. First and foremost, the purpose of every species on the planet is first to perpetuate themselves and then do whatever else they have to, but always with a mind towards survival of the species. And that is often what Wall Street is about. So there's a site that you need to go take a look at called Wealth Without Wall Street. The two founders are on with us now, Joey Mure, Russ Morgan. Gentlemen, it's great to have you on. And hey, how do we get rid of Wall Street? It's kind of like thinking, well, maybe I don't need my liver anymore. Maybe I get rid of it.
Yeah, that's a common thought, right? Like, is it possible? Like, could I actually dare to dream so far that I would not have to use these fancy professionals that I've always looked to for financial advice, whether they sit on Wall Street? Most of them don't, right? Most of them are right there in our neighborhood. They're probably somebody we go to church with, or our kids play in the same baseball league together. And we pick their brain for financial advice. And we think, man, these are the people. If I'm going to ever be successful in life, I'm ever going to rise beyond where I am in life and get to quote unquote retirement, I'm going to need one of these really highly educated individuals to help me get there. And Joey and I obviously have shared for many, many years that it's not required. There is a way, and it's a lot simpler than you think it is.
Well, I liken Wall Street to the food agribusiness. They started out, they were just producing food, and that's all, nutrition, giving nutrition to the masses. But now they've evolved into this biochemical genome industry that creates things that have no value whatsoever, but make you believe they do, no nutritional value. And you wind up eating a bunch of hollow calories and getting more and more obese by the day. So really, you're kind of like, Joey, you guys are kind of like the health food of investing, aren't you? The true organic, true farm to table and high nutrition value foods, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, because what we've done is we've simplified, at least in people's brains, that getting to financial freedom is a lot simpler than what Wall Street is trying to convince you it is, right? What Wall Street has variables that you have no control over. The market, how the market does, rates of return, the way tax consequences are treated, and it kind of continuously moves this goalpost into your 60s and even 70s and beyond, because there's no way for you to truly control those things. And they've convinced you that that's normal. When we say, wait a minute, if you really get clear on what financial freedom truly is, it's when your passive income exceeds your monthly expenses. Now, I am not that smart, and Russ is certainly not that smart, but if you can just get clear on that formula, you can get to financial freedom within a couple of years, within 10 years, not waiting until you're in your 60s and 70s. And that's what our whole community exists to do, is to empower you with that simple fact, and then to give you the tools to get there as fast as possible.
Well, that sounds great in theory, Russ, but how do you actually do this?
It does sound good, right? It's easy. It's like diet and exercise. You were using the organic health food analogy a second ago. Like, if you just eat a big salad at lunch every day, you're gonna look amazing, right? You're going to sleep better at night. You're going to be healthier. And I think here's one of the things I'm gonna first start off with. Mindset is everything, and those who actually focus on it, which I would have guessed you're listening to this show, this is important to you because you're doing something that most people aren't, which is actually investing time into at least the thought process of how do I become more successful? How do I build this survivor kit financially so that I can be a step above where I am today? Well, for us, we do say that you do have to understand the process. You have to understand what's going into things. How do you do that? Well, we built a 3-step plan. Right now, here's the key, Kerry. Right, all the marketing people tell us you gotta build 3 steps because really your 150 steps nobody's going to want to follow. And I know that that's true, right? I know that we get bogged down with all the things that we have to do in life because if you're like me, you have 4 kids, you run a full-time business, you are thinking through all the things that's going on in your kids' lives. One of them is driving, one of them is 8 and is into everything else. You've got business things, you're hiring people, you're trying to think about, well, what's going to happen when the 16 goes to college? What am I going to do this next weekend? We're going to be out of town. All of these things take our time away, right? So we spend no time actually focused on the first step in our plan, which is having an actual goal. And while that seems so simple, we have so many people, thousands of people have come through our process over the last 5 or 6 years. And we ask a really simple question. If you were able to be financially free, what would you do? And the answers are so shallow, so unthought out. And not that I'm trying to beat up on people, but what I know is that we don't have time to think through these things. So the answers we throw out is, if I didn't have to go to work, what would I do? It's usually like, I would not do anything. Like I would sit on a beach somewhere. I would go fishing every day. Like the things that we really wish we could do in that moment of stressed out, which is awesome. We would call that an ideal day. But the reality is that we're producers. We're people who've been super successful in life, and we don't want to take time away the rest of our life doing nothing. We would hate it. We want to build an ideal lifestyle. But in order to do that, you really have to get clear of what I want to do, be, and have. And some of those changes I need to start making right now. And some of the changes I'm going to be making over time. And some of them I'm going to make when I get to the point that I'm able to do it. And so building out like a true game plan, a true goal for yourself, you and your spouse, hopefully, that is so vital, is so important, but is not ever done. And
Russ,
we introduce people into that process initially so that they really know what the goalpost is, so they understand what financial freedom looks like, so that when they do arrive, they know it, right? It's not like oh, I'm here. No, I already expected these things to happen. So I know when I get there, I know I've arrived.
Russ, I was going to agree with everything you said, except the fact is that people haven't thought this out. And the real reason is people haven't given themselves a license to dream. Kerry, I believe that is something Wall Street has done to us, is that they have not given us any sort of creativity about freedom because they've moved the goalpost so far down the road. All they can think about is the here and now. It's the today. It's the urgent. It's the important. It's not these things that like, man, I could be a producer today doing something that I love, not putting up with a job that I hate or that I just am getting through. I'm just surviving. Like, this is the first step is so critical, even as simple as it sounds. It's so critical to help you to dream and to think through, what am I uniquely gifted to provide to this world? And if you don't know that, that is where life really begins. And so that's why we really focus on that to get everybody started.
All right. Well, it sounds interesting here. And hey, basically you're asking people, what would you do if you won the lottery? I mean, it's the same question because they believe, if you're the average person, you believe that your chances of financial independence are about as good as hitting the lottery, and your odds of hitting the lottery basically are pretty bad.
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Today's show is brought to you by Mustango River Resources. Their flagship projects are located in Kirkland Lake, an established gold camp that has historically produced over 70 million ounces of gold. The Kirkland West project is a high-grade gold project beside Kirkland Lake Gold's world-class Mikasa gold mine, one of the highest-grade mines in the world. The Umeja project is an advanced stage project with 600,000 plus ounces of gold along the Cadillac Break, 25 kilometers east of Mikasa. Their projects have the potential to transform into another world-class mining camp in the Kirkland Lake District. Make sure you go over to Mustango.com. That's Mistango.com. Take a look and sign up for notifications. Stock is traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange, ticker symbol MIS. For more information and to sign up for notifications, go to Mustango.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
And you think, I mean, the reality is that that's not too far from right if they follow Wall Street's math, right? So I don't know if your audience would know this name. You probably do. The guy's name's Wade Pfau, Pfau. Wade Pfau is the go-to person in the industry when it comes to retirement income. What is required of an individual's assets to make and perform so that they could actually distribute income to themselves for the rest of their life? He is world renowned. He is the one who talks on this. You may have heard the concept of the 4% rule, that if I had $1 million, I could take out 4% of it each and every year for 20 years and be guaranteed I'd have at least $1 left in my account. Well, he was one of the people who worked on that. He's actually kind of improved it upon time, because as we interviewed him in the last couple of years with low interest rates, he said it's actually more like 3%. So if I had $1 million, I could take out $30,000 a year over a 20-year period of time and have 100% probability that I would have at least $1 left in my account. Well, let that sink in for just a second. If you're a person that's spending, $10,000 a month, and you could take out $30,000 a year for every $1 million, that means that you have to have $4 million in an account. Most of us are looking at our investment accounts and says, I don't quite have 4 million, right? I've got 280,000 and I'm 55. Like, I'm not seeing me get to 4 million over the next 10 years. And we see people that are doing this math. We actually have a calculator right there in our community that does this math for them, lets them put in what age they are, how much money they're making, how much money they're saving, how much money they currently have, and it'll tell them, when would you be able to retire based upon that math? And unfortunately, it's sad. It's really sad. So when you say that it's like winning the lottery, it is. But here's the opposite, is what if you were able to focus on a much simpler concept? What if you could say, well, I spend $10,000 a month, so how can I get to the first $2,500 of passive income? Because then I would be 25% of the way to financial freedom. Because based upon the other situation, I'm like 1/16 or whatever to financial freedom. How can I get 25% of the way there? Is it possible I could do that today? We see people in our community, firefighters, people who drive, skid steers, these little excavator machines, people who are teachers, people who are, physicians, people who are all over the board in their IQ and occupation, getting to that first 25% of passive income, because that's the focus. If my passive income, as Joey said, equals or exceeds my monthly expenses, I am truly infinitely wealthy, because wealth is nothing more than a measure of the number of dollars you have in an account divided by how much you need to spend every year. That equals time. So if I have $1 million, I spend $100,000 a year, I've got 10 years worth of time. But if I have $10,000 a month of expenses and I have assets each and every month that pump out $10,000 a month of expenses, I'm infinitely wealthy because I have infinite time. And that's what most people are after. They're after time. They're after time to do the things that they want with the people that they want.
I got it. So the question is, how do you do it? What investments do you make that are going to bring this about? Because I totally get the concept. I totally embrace it. And my thing is having your own business is kind of a combination of passive and active. And if you play your cards right, the active becomes less over time and the passive becomes more. But certainly that's not the only way.
That's a great point, Kerry. And I think most business owners get stuck being the active cog in the wheel, and they never learn how to replace themselves or how to build their business to become their greatest passive asset. Right. And it takes a lot of focus and it takes a lot of humility to realize. And Russ and I have learned this personally over the last several years. We met with a consultant and we said, hey, help us to see our business for what it could be. And he started with the very simple question. He's like, well, how much do you need to make? And we gave him a number and he said, well, you're already making that now. We said, well, yeah. And he said, so the next dollars that you make should be invested into people and systems that buy back more of your time. And it was just a very simple thought, but it was one of those things that really catapulted us into now being able to take. I just came back from a 3-week vacation with my family on an RV trip across the country with my wife and 5 girls. And that never would have been possible if we hadn't started those investments into our business several years ago, along with the passive businesses that we've created. But to your point, everybody needs to start with that goal. And the second step is a plan. And the plan is very unique to you. You brought up the question, what do you invest in? And what we normally say is what sort of investor are you? And people are like, look at us like, well, what do you mean? Well, most people get stuck on the idea of an investment being the vehicle that gets you to financial freedom. But the same investment that I would make and that you would make could have very different results. And that's because you have an investor DNA that is unique to you. And I have an investor DNA. It's the way God has created me and gifted me and or given me weaknesses in certain areas that you may or may not have. And so the first step in our plan is to find out what sort of investor you are. You take an investor DNA assessment and you apply your God-given abilities and talents to we have about 6 different passive income ideas that you can borrow from us. And you can start that process of saying, well, I would really be good at this land flipping thing because I really love a process and I love a system. And, this is how God's wired me to be. But maybe you start finding out it really helps you to bring down to 1 or 2 that you can then go deep in and get some training on. And so during our plan step, you find out your investor DNA, you found out ways to specifically affect your own financial freedom score. And so you get a scorecard and you start working towards that. And you actually get an individualized plan from a coach of ours that helps you to say, okay, if you do this, this, and this is where you could be in the next 3 years and the next 5 years, whatever that may be. And it gives people a vision for what's possible so that they can then start really putting some effort behind it.
All right. Well, it sounds good. And I'm sure you're interested in it out there. So guys, how do we connect with you? You've got a whole team of people doing this, I see. What's the next step?
Well, the first step, as we laid out a second ago, Kerry, is being able to set a goal. So we built a whole community around this. The community actually is the third step, which is the support piece, because so many people fall short of that. So we built a community to support people. And the first step is if you go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/passport. The passport, as we know, is the way we get into foreign countries. It's the when we're trying to go somewhere we really want, we need to have these passports. And so we built the first step to help people define their goal, to know where they're going. And we built our whole process around this concept of a destination. And so our 3 steps are, the acronym is GPS, goal, plan, support. And if you go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/passport, you will get not only access into our community, which is an online app, something you can go to the App Store and type in Wealth Without Wall Street and be able to download. You'll be in there with about 5,000 other people. But more importantly, that's where we interact. That's where all of our content is constantly poured into, because we believe that if we can focus on one specific thing and we can do it repeatedly, it will become reality, right? Our brains are amazing computers. And if we tell it what we want to do, the subconscious will start working in that direction. And being in an environment where that is the focus, is not distracted by the cat memes and the political memes and the COVID, controversies. It's only focused on how do I create more passive income than I have monthly expenses, and how are actual real people just like me doing this and having success. That's where you go. That's where you create the first step. That's how you interact with our coaches. That's how you interact with our team as a whole.
All right. Sounds good. And if you got a question for Russ or Joey, just send me an email to kl@kerrylutz.com. We appreciate you guys stopping by. By the way, go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Sign up for our free newsletter. Guys, really appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kerry.
Kerry. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.